breaking free. Yeah, we're breaking free. No oppression is out for liberty. Breaking free. Yeah, we're taking a stand. Freedom's in our hearts. We're reclaiming our land. They try to silence us, but we won't be tamed. Voices getting louder, can't keep us in chains. We got the power, we got the might. Together we can shine, together we can fight. Feel the rhythm in your feet, it's time to stand tall. Raise your voice and shout, we're breaking down the walls. We're breaking free, yeah, we're breaking free. No oppression is out for liberty, breaking free. Yeah, we're taking a stand. Freedom's in our hearts, we're reclaiming our land. They try to silence us, but we won't be tamed. Voices getting louder, can't keep us in chains. We got the power, we got the might. Together we can shine, together we can fight. Feel the rhythm in your feet, it's time to stand tall. Raise your voice and shout, we're breaking down the walls. We're breaking free, yeah, we're breaking free. No oppression is out for liberty, breaking free. Yeah, we're taking a stand. Freedom's in our hearts, we're reclaiming our land. We're claiming our land, yeah.
Uh-oh, you put me on this.
I'm muted. Nothing's working right for me today.
Uh-oh,
Hello,
you're
everyone.
muted?
I was
Hey.
muted.
Oh, that's good.
Well, it was good when I was swearing because nothing was working, but then it was
Yeah.
bad when I was swearing
You wanna keep
live
it
that
PG?
nothing was working. So I just texted you and said, if I turn my camera off, that means you might have to talk for a minute. So
I will gladly, I just saw that. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
I'll do that.
yeah, nothing's really working today. So if that's not a good intro of why you should stick around and listen to
Yes.
this tomfoolery, I don't know what is. So
That's tomfoolery. I love it. We are going PG. That's good.
yeah, I used up all my swears. So
That's good. Your allotment is all used up. All right, good.
get kicked off all these platforms.
Again.
What's up, Casey? Oh,
Casey.
Of course, I'm having a meltdown, and Casey's on time for once. My God,
See how that
it
works?
was all working fine, Casey. I was just doing that for dramatic effect, because people like icky stuff on the internet. So everything's
Icky
working fine, Casey. I didn't break anything.
Nope.
Yep, I was muted. Yep. No.
He was.
You might have just had your earbuds in backwards or something. I don't think I was actually muted. Oh, it's the Mac. Yep.
I don't blame the Mac. Yes, it is, Casey. Wow.
Terry's throwing me under the bus. This is really going
Already.
well.
We're
This is
off
really
to a
going
great
well.
start again. This is a great topic, though. Honestly, this is kind of a this is the sign of the times. We need to kind of really pay attention to what's happening. I think it's critical for liberty activism. We need to know. We need to be able to kind of decide friend or foe, right? I think this is kind of a great topic.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Terry, you want to say hi before I put you back in the control center?
In the background.
Sure. Hi, everybody. You guys have a
Hey,
great
Terry.
night. Enjoy the show.
Thank you again, Terry.
Terry's womaning the chat. If anybody wants to say hi or ask a question or make a comment or talk about my life choices and my technology and the color of my microphone and the stuff that you guys usually like to talk about, you're welcome to talk about any of that stuff too. So
I pick life choices.
Oh,
yeah, well, tomorrow is Valentine's Day. I can tell you a couple stories.
indeed.
All right. Thanks, Terry. All right. So the main topic here,
Yes.
Township Liberation. Is Elon Musk turning libertarian? So, he mentions it every now and again, and he's doing some stuff. So I thought we would put him under the microscope
He's
and
doing some stuff. Yeah.
judge him by our standards, bust out the old, are you a real libertarian
Right.
ruler and see what we all think. So yeah, Terry says make sure you share. That'd be great. All right. So the usual stuff I like to talk about real quick. This is Township Liberation. We do it every Thursday at 8 p.m. Great opportunity to hear from the great Mike Decentralize, who is a real thought leader in this area, and I get to pick his brain. So this is a good time for me. Yes. And yeah, I like to say share, and Terry likes me to remember to say share. So share, please.
Share far and share wide.
There's Mike's contact. His personal is 2 Free Mike. His Township Liberation account is at Town Liberation. And his book is The Revival of Common Sense, The Case for Township Liberation. It is on Amazon. It is priced too low. You can get it for $5 for the Kindle. I have 2 copies.
Yes.
Make sure you follow the lovely Terry Batts, our producer. She is at Batts T76, at Batts T76. She's also part of the Rhino Removal Project, so you'll see her posting about that on her timeline.
What a great image that is.
Pablo Escobar's rhinos are loose in the United States, I believe is what they're working on. And my technical support is Mini Free.
That's right.
He is at Mini Free for US. And then that's me. I am Freedom for Us for All, or Freedom Uncut is
Uncut,
which I post on, like, I don't know, every year or so.
I know.
We'll probably start doing that a little bit. My YouTube is hopping thanks to Cajun Queen and Terry and some other friends that have helped out. So you can go on the YouTube. The nice thing about the YouTube is you can actually set notifications. So if we're a minute or 2 late, you'll still see it.
And that never happens, right? We're always on time.
And then my Rumble, and Terry's got this on her feed as well, but we're trying to get the Rumble to, I think Terry told me and I wasn't listening, but I think it's 100 people or something. And then we can get into some sort of program, and it's not the program where the feds watch you. So it sounds like it's a better deal than the program I'm in now. So on every other network other than Rumble. So yeah, go to my Rumble and please subscribe. If you haven't set up an account, it's easy to do and it's free. Saturday, we're not doing it tomorrow because it's Valentine's Day and other people are luckier in love than me. So we're moving it to Saturday. Are you smarter than a politician? And it'll be the second version of that, probably the 20th game show we've done or whatever. A lot of fun. Mike Decentralized not doing very well. Negative 19,586 points, I believe. Was
the cool thing is I get to participate without actually being there. So well, I look at the silver lining, right? I may have the lowest score, but at least I don't even have to be present to participate. So that's kind of cool.
Zach says he prefers YouTube. Zach's also trying to give you points, and I won't let him. So he tries to keep getting you out of the hole on the game.
Thank you for always looking out for me, Zach.
Yeah, let's boost the algos. I should probably learn how to say cool stuff like that.
I know.
Crank up the record player.
Right.
Probably dates me a little bit.
Play it on 78 speed, man.
Yeah, we're more vinyl guys,
Vinyl, man. There's nothing like it.
I
gotta say, I like the porcupine image, and I'm not just saying that because of my bias as a libertarian, but I just think the porcupine guy looks the coolest of those 3.
What about the porcupine suit? That's my favorite part.
I think that is especially cool. Yeah, I mean, although honestly, the the donkey looks like the most like traditional like politician. The elephant, he's got a pretty slick suit too. I like this.
Yeah, he's kind of pimped out a little bit, but
he is. Pimping ain't easy, especially if you're a Republican, right?
especially if you're an elephant.
Especially if you're an elephant.
If you look like an elephant or Chris Christie, it's not going to go well for you.
Right? Oh, God.
Zach just gave you the national debt.
Thank you, Zach. Yeah,
Zach, I see a minus in front of there. My vision's going a little bit.
You see?
Yeah, 8 tracks. Yeah, 8 tracks would be good. Like an old Trans Am. An old fire chicken.
Nothing like that. That was the 8 tracks. People don't even know.
And all right. So, and then sometimes we do You Aren't a Real Libertarian. That's pretty fun too.
Yeah. Which this is almost a version of that tonight, really.
Yeah.
Is Elon Musk a libertarian? Like, is he a real libertarian? Of course not. But,
Will Elon Musk have less points than Mike by the end of the night is really the question we're going for here.
Yeah, right.
All right. So Township Liberation. Again, thanks for joining us. Is Elon Musk turning libertarian is our topic tonight. So Terry, our research guru, went through the Elon Musk archives and brought up. Are you taking your lamp out for a walk here?
Yeah, might as well. I just realized I didn't even have my lamp on this whole time. And I'm looking kind of dark, so let's see if I can,
This is high tech. 8
This is high-tech
tracks,
stuff.
lamps.
Yeah, it's not working. It's not working. I'll just have to be. Oh well.
Older, Zach. Older than 85. All right. So Terry, our crack research guru, went through old Elon Musk tweets to find when he's been talking about libertarianism or talking about Ron Paul or the great libertarian economists like Milton Friedman. Any mention there. And so she pulled out a bunch. And here's like, I call this the tweet heard round the libertarian world.
Yes.
And when Elon Musk finally paid homage to the great Ron Paul and said it would be great to have Ron Paul as part of Doge. And Ron Paul said, I'd be happy to talk to you about it, Elon. 12 million views. 12 million views. So, he's got what, like 130 million followers on X or something.
Mm-hmm.
And probably only about 125 million are the bots that follow us. So he's got at least 5 million real viewers.
I would think, actually, yes.
Yeah. So what do you think about this one? What did you think when you saw him paying homage to the great Ron Paul?
Well, obviously it was like, this is a important corner that's been turned to get that level of acknowledgement, because I remember all too well, and I think most everybody, young and old, who are able to observe this, remember how poorly Ron Paul was treated in 2008 and 2012, particularly by Fox News. I just ridiculed openly. It's one thing to have George Stephanopoulos do that, you expect, which he did, which you expect, but then to have Fox News just absolutely just obliterate it, it was just there's rude. I remember Hannity was particularly awful towards him. And these are the things that come to mind when the richest man in the world says, I would love to have you part of my team publicly. And Ron Paul acknowledges, I'm willing to do that. So I just think that, as horrible as it was to watch them mistreat probably the most correct person, the most accurate predictor of the future that has ever been in Congress, have him treated so poorly and then go to this level of acknowledgement. That's huge, because it shows that the paradigm really has shifted. Now, again, you can say or think whatever you want about Elon Musk, but just the sheer volume of attention that received, gave me tremendous hope. So I can't help but be optimistic that can lead. So even if it's just the discussion, even if it's just people talking about it, that's a real shift in awareness of your everyday common, Twitter user or X user, whatever. It's just a level of awareness that I can't help but be optimistic about. At least people are educated by that interaction. So I can't help but be optimistic about that. Even if nothing necessarily comes of it, at least people are aware of it in a level that has not happened since the Ron Paul revolution itself. This is sort of the next sort of step of that.
Yeah, the 2012 Republican primary where Romney ended up getting the nomination.
Good
and
God.
The famous one was like, I think it was CNN said that Michelle Bachmann dropped down to third and Romney went to first, and they never mentioned that Ron Paul was in second.
Right.
And, so like they just went from like first to third,
Jon Stewart made a big deal out of that, and rightfully so. And I'm not a huge Jon Stewart person, obviously, but that was really, he did a really good segment on that. I'll never forget that. He really picked them apart for that. It's like, why is Fox News ignoring Ron Paul? And he went on to say, like, first of all, he went on to say he's really the only Republican I ever really liked, but it was amazing that happened right before our eyes. and now we have rightfully, Ron Paul's finally entering into a level of appreciation that he deserves. Even those on the right, well, certainly the MAGA right, appreciate Ron Paul. That to me is, again, reason to be optimistic. Call me crazy or call me overly optimistic, but I think that's a good thing.
So the next one is, this is from December 9th, like a month later. Elon Musk agrees with Ron Paul's call to eliminate foreign aid.
You're here.
Musk is hoping to spur cuts to government spending via Doge. And this is Fox News, the one that had never heard of Ron Paul, apparently.
Yeah, Ron who? Yeah.
Yeah. And, so that's another one. I mean, and love him or hate him, and I bounce back and forth between the two, but Elon Musk does not talk like a politician.
No.
The word eliminate is significant. It's not curb or
curtail.
Curtail, exactly.
We're just gonna lower we're gonna tighten our belt on this foreign aid thing. Okay, Republicans, you're the tighten your belt party, gotcha. But still money gets spent and we get stolen from. So yeah, this is different. This is a different animal.
Casey said 2012, the year they messed with Ron Paul's mic and made him sound mousy. Yeah. Where you were right. I couldn't remember who it was, but it was Jon Stewart. And he was talking about how many different, how many minutes they gave to everybody. And Ron Paul was 8 minutes or something in the whole debate. They were really trying to get rid of him. Chris says, I love that you're doing comedy shows now. Yep. And make sure to dox Mike harder. I go easy on people, but just for you, Zach, I'll start teasing people a little bit. Luke's here. Welcome, Luke.
Hey, Luke.
And all right, so the next one is Elon puts, Doge. What would you say you do here, doing the old Office Space meme? Great. And Ron Paul answers, start cutting. So the back and forth has been pretty epic, and throwing giving airtime to Ron Paul and putting him in the spotlight. We've been waiting for this since the 80s, right? Back when I had the 8-track player, Zach.
This is 1988. I first voted for Ron Paul. Right, this is my first person I ever voted for president. Right, so yeah, this is huge to see him displayed like this when he was. You think he was a fringe in 2008 and 2012. In 1988, hardly anybody even heard of him. He was a Libertarian Party candidate for president. So yeah, that's a huge deal.
And then the next one, this one's kind of small, but Ron Paul says something about Trump's going to, get a second term as president. The danger of neocons yet again infesting his cabinet administration is steadily increasing. Trump told Rogan what a mistake it was to hire John Bolton last time around, but and it goes on. And Musk replies, I agree. We should not empower neocon warmongers.
Love that. That's great, right? How could anybody, again, love him or hate him, go back and forth all you want, but it's pretty interesting that he identifies what a neocon warmonger really is, right? He's pointing to all these people. Ron Paul is pointing to all these people that were just awful choices in the original Trump administration, and Elon Musk is you're absolutely right. I would argue against having anybody like that ever again in this in a future cabinet. And sure enough, I don't know about some of the things Pete Hegseth said about NATO don't exactly inspire me, but I still think that the steering away from the neocon right, which, let's face it, still dominates the GOP. No matter, MAGA is the grassroots level in particular, fantastic phenomenon, but they don't control the GOP yet the way I think a lot of people think they do. They should have but there's this still a very real neocon, old school, mutual controlled opposition dominant GOP leadership, and that's and Musk, who has, let's face it, probably has the most of the president's ear of anybody right now. Is basically saying, we should stay away from those guys. Again, I can't help but be positive about that or be optimistic.
Yeah. And, the younger folks on here probably won't even remember this or know this, but back in the 90s, or the 2000s at least, neocon was a badge of honor. Like that was, the forward thinking. That was the forward thinking, moniker that they embraced. That they weren't just conservatives; they were neoconservative.
Neoconservative, stupid.
And they wore it with a badge of honor. So to flip it around and say, neocon warmongers, which is what we thought they were,
Yeah, exactly.
It's just such a trip. Like we would have never thought that Ron Paul would get any airtime of any kind. I mean, he didn't get it when he ran for president. Why would he get it afterwards? Right.
Yeah, right.
After he retired and, I mean, he's in his 80s now, for it to flip around to this. I mean, I would have never predicted this.
Right. I mean, it's again hard not to be optimistic, but how great is it to go to watch? Is you did this very good point. Very good point. The fact that neocon has become a pejorative versus at one time, you're absolutely right. It's like, oh, I'm not just a conservative, I'm a neoconservative. It was like, oh, it's fashionable. It's neat. American exceptionalism is so great. Well, it's not American exceptionalism if we're being bled dry to provide military support to nations, especially nations that can afford their own military. We need to be the world leader. We need to be a leader on the world stage. I mean, the fact that anybody bought that at all is repulsive to me. So wait a minute, in order to be a leader on the world stage, we have to fleece our own people to lead the world. Let the world lead itself. We just take care of America. That is America first. And what a contrast, America first really is versus this American exceptionalism nonsense that came out of at one point. You said very very correctly how proudly neocon a lot of people were. And that wing of the GOP can't die fast enough, but I don't know that it will. I think that there's going to be a showdown between MAGA GOP and neocon GOP. I don't think that conflict has come to an end by any stretch. But it's great to see, the neocons called out for what they are. I mean, he says warmonger. I like to say war pigs. I'm a bit of a Black Sabbath fan, so I think that's great that this has finally come to light.
Just like witches at black masses.
Exactly.
Chris said his appearance on Morton Downey Jr. in '88 was his first time seeing him. That was still epic. I mean,
that actually, I saw that. That's actually what helped. First of all, it helped me identify the fact that I wasn't really like the Republican that my parents were, even though I had registered Republican at the time as my first political party as an 18-year-old kid. And then I saw him on Ron Paul on Morton Downey. I said, I like what this guy's saying better than what I hear. I certainly like him better than I wasn't going to vote for George Herbert Walker Bush. I already knew that, even though I registered Republican like my parents. And then I realized, okay, I'm really probably more like this guy. Voted for a libertarian, and then I got to hear an actual libertarian come speak at my college, and been a libertarian ever since 1991. So I think this is a huge moment where Ron Paul is getting the acknowledgement for the impact he's had for liberty in this country, and the fact that he's getting so well received, and the put downs, the things that he holds in contempt, like neocons and warmongers and whatnot. Those are things that now are a standard practice among MAGA, particularly grassroots MAGA people, who rightfully criticize that sort of thing. It's honestly it's been a real, what do they call it these days, white pill for me. That's actually one of the most optimistic things that I've come away with, and I never really expected to see that among the GOP. I just never, because I come from an era where I despise the GOP and the Democrats equally for different reasons. I despise the GOP. As a 21-year-old, 22-year-old fresh libertarian, I despise the GOP for their military interventionism, their bloodthirsty war pig tendencies, not just abroad but at home with their ridiculous war on drugs. And I hated the Democrats because of their insanely unjust redistribution of wealth schemes, taxation. Literally, they were the party of taxation without representation. They still are, as well as a whole number of other sort of market impeding sentiments that are just repulsive to me, that end up doing the opposite of what they purport to do. I look at the quintessential Democrat is kind of like what Elizabeth Warren is versus what she pretends to be, and that's kind of been their thing for a long time. But now they've adopted all the worst traits of what the GOP used to be. You know, they're warmongers too. They're pro-surveillance state. They're pro, absolving people or crushing civil liberties, and they're absolving their own for the crimes that they still want to have enforced. So it's a horrible devolution that I've seen in the Democrats. Whereas there's this wing within the GOP that I never thought would happen, that is against at least military intervention passionately.
And then
Yes,
this was this week, and
Yes.
when your biggest donor supports the idea of Ron Paul leading a Federal Reserve audit team, pretty epic.
That's a big wipe. Of course, I take everything, and I think I need to qualify this discussion going forward right now. I take everything that happens at the national level, the federal level of our government, or any national level of any government, with a huge grain of salt. Because I know that historically, let's be honest, statistically, historically, it's all been for show, particularly the last 100 or so years. It's all theater, right? So my whole thought is, I'll still take everything with a grain of salt, but man, are they having the right kind of discussion? So even if it doesn't pan out the way we want it to, the way libertarians like myself would fantasize about, like Ron Paul leading an audit of the Federal Reserve. Are you kidding? Of course, that's like Christmas, 100 times over. But would it actually, even if it doesn't transpire, the fact that it's now entered the popular imagination of the masses, it's entered the popular discussion, and people are thinking about it and the implication of it and are talking about it, that alone is kind of worth it. Again, I'm optimistic about it. Even if it doesn't transpire that anything like that happens, the fact that it got discussed at all, and we can refer back to it, and we can have Terry do research and pick apart these instances where it gets mentioned and discussed. It's not something that people are just going to forget. It's something we can point back to and say, remember when this was discussed? Remember when this happened? So at the very least, it's entered the popular imagination, and for that, again, I'm optimistic. I don't know if I've ever been this optimistic in a way. Still not putting all my faith in the federal level of government for any reason, but I at least like how at this moment in time, those at the top are doing, or at least saying the right things in detail, not just offering platitudes like Ronald Reagan was very good at that. Not to say he was necessarily insincere, but there was a lot of sort of liberty-leaning platitudes that were coming out of even the Reagan administration. This is much bigger. They're calling into question the very things, the very apparatus that is crushing liberty and destroying the American dream, the American vision, and American principles. So that's, I'm sorry, I can't help but be optimistic about that.
Luke says, audit it and shut it down.
Exactly.
Luke.
Yes.
Casey
Same thing with the
said,
IRS.
You have to be optimistic about it. It's the first time we can actually look at the government and see positive change.
Yeah, this is like, this is better than Coolidge. This is better than, I'm trying to look back in history at different administrations. This is better than the Coolidge administration. It's better than even Jefferson. Jefferson as a revolutionary was better than Jefferson as a president. But like I'm looking at through American history and like looking at the presidential administrations, I'm like, it's hard to find anything quite this pro-liberty at this point. And that's, I wasn't really expecting this, to be honest with you. And I'm pleasantly surprised.
And Gene says, with you two guys being libertarian, are y'all happy with Trump? If not, why not? So let me take this one.
Great question.
So Gene, that's the exercise we're going through here is, one of the big draws of Trump was obviously Musk coming in and doing Doge and, the promised cuts, the reduction of government size, things that are very libertarian. And so that's why we're talking about, is Elon Musk a libertarian? Because he's a libertarian and he's his biggest donor and he has an office at the White House. that's the most power a libertarian's ever had. So, you know, that would be pretty exciting. Someone the other day said that libertarians are the moral high ground. And, you know, I thought about that for a minute. I was like, you know, I'll take that. I'll own that. I'll wear that, you know,
Sure.
and, you know, so I get into trouble all the time with my friends that are MAGA because Trump will say something. I'll say, well, that's a bad idea. And, you know,
That's it, right.
I feel like I tell them all the time, like, if you want to make America great again, you have to be vigilant. You know, you have to analyze everything. You have to be, you know, all of us need to be vigilant and watching and commenting. And, you know, things have happened where, you know, the sheriff from Broward County was nominated to be in the cabinet. And we brought up real quick that he's the one that arrested the pastor for
That's right.
having a service during COVID, and they pulled his name. So like
That's right.
vigilance works. And, you know, that's what X has done. That's what Musk buying X has done, you know, so, but we're going to analyze every part of it. And I'm not going to take a day off, and I'm not going to say, well, the last idea was a good idea, so I'm going to give you a pass on the stupid Gaza idea, because that might be one of the worst ideas I've ever heard. And I'm going to say that, you know, war is always bad. Killing people, always bad. Displacing people without their permission, always bad. Not allowing them back after you fix stuff, always bad. Like, so we're going to comment on all of it, but we're also pragmatic. And I like to say that, you know, Mike and I are both incrementalists. And
yeah, that's fair.
So we have an ideal, we have a place we'd like to get to, but we'll be happy to take any of the wins we can get on the way there. And we were headed way in the wrong direction under Biden and under Bush and under Obama. And, you know, all of them were headed in the wrong direction. More government control, more taxes, more spending, more debt, more war, more everything that we hate. So we're thrilled that we're not headed, you know, we don't seem to be headed off that cliff anymore. Now it remains to be seen. You know, people are loving the Doge cuts. And of course, I got in trouble again of saying, well, how about cutting taxes then? Because you can cut everything you want, but if you don't cut our taxes, it's not going to improve the economy, and it's not going to improve our lives, you know, especially while, you know, they're rationing eggs and groceries are, you know, twice the cost they were a few years back.
Yeah, I'd say that's a fair assessment. Obviously, I agree. The other thing is, as far as am I pleased with what's happening overall? Of course, right? But at the same time, you know, people who look at libertarians like we are sort of like the purists by comparison, or we're at least, you know, more pure in our intentions of where we think things should go. I look at it this way, you know, and you know, it really is a matter of what's pulling us out of dystopia. Right, because we were headed there. We weren't headed there. We were there. We kind of, in many ways, we still are. There's a lot of work that needs to be done still, but we are in a state of being pulled out of the dystopia. Do I agree with everything that they're doing? Do I think some things may be counterproductive that have been suggested? Absolutely, of course. But am I going to not look a gift horse in the mouth? I'm not going to look the gift horse in the mouth. I'm not going to, you know, not appreciate the wins that we are getting for liberty, which honestly I wasn't expecting from the top. Now that I basically I put myself in a position where, like, look, I am not a yes man for everything that Trump says or does. It doesn't mean I'm opposed to the things that he's doing that I think are actually the right thing to do, or more importantly, the people he's listening to that are implementing the things on his behalf that are the right thing to do, that are pro-liberty, that are restoring the American principles and so forth. Does that mean he gets a blanket pass all the time for me? No, I'm still going to point out the things like, you know, I don't think this is right. Yeah, this was a little bit goofy. This was way goofy. But I also, and here's another caveat though. I also think that he, for better or for worse, intentionally or not, is throwing off the so-called world leaders of the world with the tariff talks and all that stuff. I mean, obviously, I don't agree with tariffs any more than I agree with taxes. It's the same thing to me. But boy, do I like watching all of the so-called world leaders scurry and panic, especially Justin Trudeau. That was beautiful. You know, oh, we're going to do this and we're going to respond this way. We're going to, it's like, that was actually fun for me, even though I don't like tariffs, but I do like just the talk of tariffs causing all this chaos among some of the worst world leaders, so-called world leaders that we've had on the world stage that are part of the dystopia I always talk about. Come on, Keir Starmer, he deserved to have terrorists threatened, against, the guy's a freaking tyrant. And I mean, I hope that they find a way to get rid of him in less than 5 years in the UK. But that's, again, I'm willing to play along because I'm already not putting all my eggs in the national level basket, right? That's not where I see liberty really going to last. I see a few major blows being dealt to the dystopia, and that's something, again, pleasant surprise for me. And I'll celebrate that, and I'll, say thumbs up Donald Trump for those things. But at the same time, I'm like, and this is kind of the point I want to get to at some point in this podcast is, it's still going to be up to we the governed. There was no reason to expect or want everybody at the, everything to fall on the shoulders of the people that are at the top, Donald Trump and his administration and Elon Musk and so forth. There's no reason why we should have put all the onus on them to fix the country. It really is going to be up to us from the bottom up, we the governed, to take back the authority that we have as the governed, as there should be no government without the consent of the governed, as the Declaration of Independence says. So it's still, no matter what, falls back on us. Am I glad that Donald Trump is in office versus whatever mutation, intelligence agency driven creation, a Kamala Harris administration would be? Of course, because if nothing else, he's running an amazing game of interference. He's running a great offense. And we, as sort of like the defense for liberty, we, the governed, need to play defense now. And no matter how good it gets, and no matter how many victories happen at the top, we have to understand that's also reversible to an extent. I mean, in 4 years. So we really have to do our part. And that's kind of the plug I want to make for, and that theme will come back up, I'm sure, as we discuss some of these more examples. But that's my takeaway as far as what Trump is doing now in office, and whether or not I'm happy about it. Of course I am. Good way to put it.
So I am happy with water as much as I am thirsty.
Yes, Luke, indeed.
Zach says Coolidge signed the bill that made the Federal Reserve permanent.
I knew you were going to bring that up, Zach, and I set you up to mention that, and you walked right into it, because that's actually really important, because even the great Calvin Coolidge, right, was far from perfect. I mean, honestly, until Kennedy started to really, John F. Kennedy started to really challenge the intelligence community's dominance of the executive branch and essentially its unconstitutional control over the government. I didn't necessarily like a whole lot of Kennedy's policies, right? I mean, domestic policies, not so much, but the fact that he paid for his resistance to dystopia with his life, obviously increases his stature in my eyes quite a bit, as it should all Americans. But yeah, I mean, Coolidge wasn't perfect. Jefferson, wasn't perfect. In fact, the whole Greenland thing reminded me of like the Jefferson administration, like, hey, there's this whole Louisiana Territory thing. I think we should make that part of America. There's certain parallels, right? That I picked up on. So yeah, I mean, no presidential administration it passes perfectly perfectly flying colors in my eyes. There's a handful that at least I think get a passing grade, but the vast majority of presidential administrations in the United States run contrary to the American principles. I think by and large, most presidents weren't that great, and their administrations, same thing.
Yeah, I don't want to go too deep into the Coolidge thing, but he was kind of backed into that, if I remember correctly. I want to go into that deep.
No, he was, and I think the other thing that was very, he even opposed alcohol prohibition personally, but because that had been enshrined in the Constitution, he felt obligated to uphold the Constitution, which included the prohibition of alcohol, one of the most ridiculous things that ever was put into law anywhere in human history. But there you have it. So yeah, no, I still think Coolidge overall still phenomenal. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, here's Andy. Welcome, Andy. Yeah, we were just.
Thank you. We were waiting for you, Andy. We were just goofing around until you showed up.
I was just pressing the wrong buttons till you got here, so that was good.
That was on purpose.
Luke said that just makes Grover Cleveland a stronger number one for me.
He's amazing. Yeah, Grover Cleveland was a great one. Honestly, he's one of the better. Obviously, one top five, in my opinion.
He's top 3 Grover too.
Yes, it is.
Really happy that Buddy Carter, main sponsor of the Fair Tax, and Rand Paul was there at RFK Jr.'s swearing in.
Yes,
Well, that's pretty cool.
That is cool.
I'm pleased with what they say is supposed to be happening, but it's not even close to happening yet. Yeah, that's kind of how I feel too.
Yeah, exactly, Chris. We're still in wait and see, but let's put it this way: the discussion alone is powerful enough to enter like the general public consciousness that I think it's worth celebrating that at least.
Can you take a
You're muted. You're muted.
I got a friend here who wants to comment really quick. There we go.
What's up, Eric?
Yeah, Mike and I, we're tight. Now, I'm a speechwriter for Trump.
And I'm literally right here. Yeah, I don't know if he knows it. Might as well get the cat out of the bag. Go ahead.
I'm a speechwriter for Trump. Have been for 2 months. What he's done is not going to go backwards. So even though you guys are right that it's in the discussion, he hasn't thrown a pebble or an anvil into the creek and the lake. He's thrown a mountain. Everybody knows that it's going to keep on going. So all the people, the laity, the regular people, the libertarians, we're all going to be called to our finest hour because it's too far already. This isn't joking.
Yeah, Eric is pretty positive that things are going to only get better, and
it's just going to bring the whole people to play.
Yeah,
in other words, it's not going to stay in Washington. Now we've irritated the really big people. They will come back like hell if we don't go all the way. And all the way now is the regular people, the grassroots, the Township Liberation. It's got to be 1,000 cities.
Yes. So that's kind of, again, the point I was making is like, no matter what happens, it's still going to fall on us. We, the government, have to do our part because, in one way or another, the empire will strike back. I think we did blow up a Death Star, but the empire will strike back. And it's up to us to do our part to nullify unjust governance, sort of reclaim our right as American citizens, as sovereign people. And that happens from the bottom up. So that's our part to play. And that's every bit as important as anything that could ever happen at the national level with Elon Musk and Doge and all that.
Absolutely agree. Yeah, I mean, all signs are pointing to good things happening, but I'm with Chris.
Yeah, we'll see.
I've been governed for my entire life. I am not, I am not into giving them the benefit of the doubt.
Understood.
Understood. Cautiously optimistic is pretty much ecstatic in my book. So
yeah, that's ecstatic for you. Yes.
Yeah. Casey said Gaza and tariffs to bring chip manufacturers are the bad decisions I see so far. Yeah, I mean,
and also Casey,
Israel Gaza thing.
And this, I gotta say this because this is one of those things where, on principle, if we just take what people say as if they say what they mean, versus as if it's just some sort of a ploy or some sort of I mean, just the fact that he's talking about Gaza so kind of recklessly in a way. I mean, in a way, I kind of like. I kind of like what happened after that. I mean, yeah, it's kind of a ridiculous idea, but the repercussions of him even talking like that was actually pretty fascinating. I mean, my hope, of course, is that whatever it takes to bring peace and stability to that region, especially when I think the major parties and major players on both sides aren't interested in peace. They're perfectly happy martyring their own people for their cause. And that goes with both sides, right? Or they're perfectly happy with perpetuating a cycle of mutual exchange of atrocity. But if Trump can throw a wrench in that by just talking about building some resorts in Gaza, okay, great. Let's see how that plays out. So I'm actually really forgiving about some of these really bad ideas being mentioned because, first of all, they are really bad ideas, and I think he might know that they're really bad ideas. Certainly, people around him probably know. But I look at the repercussions of just bringing that into the discussion, and I'm like, this isn't so bad. I like kind of the chaos in a sense among world leaders and among so-called leaders of the conflict on both sides surrounding the Israel-Gaza conflict, Israel-Hamas conflict. And I'm thinking, you know what? this isn't so. This is actually causing some interesting things to happen, and it's certainly changing the sort of brutal. It's just changing the narrative just enough to make it interesting. Again, still acknowledge those are terrible ideas, but the talking about it part, I'm kind of interested to see how it all pans out.
Let's see here. I just want.
Yes, that's a great shirt. That's right. I meant to mention that. That's a fantastic shirt.
I gotta go a little higher here.
Yeah, show it off. Yes.
Oh, does that count as an ab workout? Because that hurt.
It counts as an ab workout, and let's also say that. And this is kind of, I don't know if any of you guys know Nick, but Nick and I were mentioning earlier on X that absolutely the Second Amendment covers killdozers. You absolutely can build a killdozer. It is your right. It is a arm. It's your right to bear killdozers.
You know my thoughts on that.
I know you do. Yes.
You shouldn't have to tell the government how many killdozers you own.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody's business.
Oh, Phil's here. What's up, Phil?
Hey, Phil.
Beware of wolves in sheep's clothing.
There's the thing. Yes, we were going to get to that. Or at least I was
going to bring AI into the world's most powerful state. I know Phil's got deep thoughts on this and brought it up Phil, on your space on Tuesday.
Yes, and in fact, Phil, I meant to introduce you to the guy that was just on here, Eric, who's absolutely wrote a book called Quantum Intelligence versus Artificial Intelligence. And he is very much sounding the alarm of artificial intelligence. If I was to pick the one thing that I think is disconcerting about Elon Musk, well, two things. But the first one is he acknowledges the danger of artificial intelligence, yet it seems like there is a government agency that's embracing the idea of artificial intelligence. And I just think it's as dangerous as splitting the atom, if not more so. They're playing with forces that are disconcerting. Now, Elon Musk says he's aware of the dangers of artificial intelligence, but yet he's part of this AI thing. And also, I haven't forgotten, he, for better or worse, Elon Musk does still embrace the idea of some form of transhumanism, which I cannot embrace for any reason. But I get that there may be some explanations and some justifications for that. But those to me are the more concerning things about Elon Musk than any of these, seemingly very libertarian things he's said and done and is engaged in talking to the right people like Ron Paul and so forth.
I want to get to a couple more of these, but then I want to get back into it.
Yes.
This one I'm not even going to comment on, but it's just, I had to put it on there just so I had video evidence that you like this idea at some point, because you'll deny it in one of our arguments later.
One of our arguments. Yeah. I don't know about that. I think we need to decentralize America, not add to it at this point. That's my opinion.
Yeah. It seems like global domination might be a bad idea and not cost effective. Luke thanked Eric for his wisdom.
Yeah, you had some thank yous from people listening.
Look, the die is already cast. The dice has been cast. It's too much has gone forward. What they're doing is ripping the guts out of the bureaucracy. The far left can't allow that to happen. So it's going to be all out war.
Yeah, so Eric's reminding us that they're not just going to sit back and, I don't know if you guys can hear that, but it's like you're not just the far left establishment is not going to just sit back and let this happen without a really intense fight. We haven't really seen their response other than some of the goofy counter narratives that the mainstream media is trying to come up with. Like, well, they're cutting things that are that the pushback has not even been fully begun to what these efforts are going to cause, and so he's predicting there's going to be a big fight ahead. It's not going to be quite so easy. I obviously I agree that's also true.
Phil says this is the first time a libertarian saying violent theft of property is a positive shakeup.
Violent theft of property
wasn't me.
Yeah,
was it? Yeah. I don't know. I dropped something. I might have said something stupid when I dropped something.
No, I don't think so. Violent theft of property. Was that Greenland? Is that what we're talking about? Greenland? Yeah, I'm not sure what that is, because I think that's the Greenland's a bad idea. Oh, I think maybe he's talking about Gaza. Yeah, I think that's the whole Gaza proposal is preposterous and a terrible idea. but I think it's. I mean, again, there's with Donald Trump in particular. There's a you can't take what he says seriously necessarily, because sometimes he just says things to get the reaction and to cause the chaos.
That's what Andy's saying here. That this is.
Andy, I agree.
Thank you, Andy, for not saying it's 5D chess, because that would have made me kick you.
No. But I tend to agree that I think there's something to that, because they're not trying to. I don't think it was ever a serious thing. I think it was meant to cause what's happening right now, which is cause a bunch of chaos and discussion. And why would he think? And for better or worse, I mean, I guess we'll just see how that plays out. But I don't think it was ever really a seriously on the table. I think it was just kind of as they just kind of pointed out. I don't think that was ever seriously on the table for implementation. I think it was just to cause the reaction and to see what happens. Art of the deal stuff.
But being the moral high ground, I feel like, and now that they've said that, I've just appointed myself as the moral high ground. I will, from this point forward, be the moral high ground. If you need any judgments on,
you should get a shirt for that too.
Yeah. If you need any judgments on anything, I will be available to judge you and tell you why it's a bad idea. Yeah, and so
do you need some like Pharisee robes, or
But if it's a dumb idea, like, you don't just say he knows what he's doing. Somebody's got to say it's a dumb idea. So and I didn't ask for the job, but I willingly accept it. I mean, somebody's got to do it, or I'm going to end up in a killdozer. So
right,
those are your two options. So,
those are the two options. Let's take the moral high ground option.
Yeah. And then, speaking of moral high ground, Zach says no anarchists are the moral high ground. Well, I think this was social media diva that said that it was libertarians are the moral high ground. But you are correct. They don't know the word anarchist. They think it means messy or something like that. So, but it's actually a nice little segue to say, probably not next week, but in the future, we got this one coming.
That's right. Yeah.
Make anarchy great again.
Zach is like reading our minds tonight. That's great, because a perfect segue into what we're talking about. Yeah, anarchy being the etymology of the word, meaning no rulers, not no rules, not chaos, as it's often associated with, and what people would like you to think it means. It just simply means no rulers. But we'll get to that another time.
You can tell it's my show because Casey says, "Oh Jesus," and I don't even know what she's referring to. There could have been so many "Oh Jesuses" in the last 5 minutes.
So many opportunities to elicit that reaction.
Yeah, my grandmother used to say, "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph." So that's another version of that.
I can hear the Irish brogue in that. Oh, Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. I can hear it.
Musk and Trump are plagiarizing libertarianism, not turning into it. Well, I mean, Chris, obviously you're always like, sunshine and rainbows, but you gotta take what you get. It's like, you got to have the opportunity to say, I'm glad that he's doing some things that fall in our world, because the majority of good ideas are going to be libertarian ideas. Yeah. So like, he doesn't have to get like, a taxation is theft tattoo on his knuckles or something. But if he gets rid of the income tax, that's better than we've had in my lifetime. So I'm going to take it. So they can plagiarize all they want if they do it,
Yeah.
Learn and implement, repeat.
Exactly. And if we're to kind of take Donald Trump's established history before he even got involved in politics, if he wants to take the credit and he wants to get all the glory and then get all the credit for something good that he accomplishes for individual, take it. As long as we don't have a Federal Reserve anymore because Ron Paul audited and then destroyed it. Okay, take the credit for that, Donald Trump. I don't care as long as it gets done. Right? It's like if you're into credit and you want the credit and the attention and the glory. Take it. The Nebuchadnezzar of the modern era. Take the credit. Be glorious, as long as good stuff happens. Give Gaza killdozers. Okay.
Love it.
I love how these go. These podcasts are, people don't understand how much fun.
I would donate money to that GoFundMe.
Oh, for sure. What a great GoFundMe.
Just saying. Luke says anarchy equals edgy goth teenagers. or middle-aged guys with full
gonna say,
honks and
I haven't been a
killdozer
teenager
shirts.
in a while, but
Yeah.
you know what? But I was that too. So yeah, there's a song. Was it Against Me? I was a teenage anarchist. Yeah. There's some truth to that statement.
I don't know. Something happened there. I think I unstarred something, but let's see. Luke also says, my litmus test is that Trump vetoes any long-term increase to the deficit. My hope is for a spending freeze at least.
I think that's fair.
Well, I will talk a heap load of crap if he only does a spending freeze. And again, I've been lambasted by my MAGA friends for talking about this since, really the beginning of the primaries. And when Musk said on the stage that they're targeting 2 trillion in cuts, I was like 30 seconds later in the comments saying that doesn't even get us to the pre-COVID emergency spending that, seemed to buy more vacation houses and turf fields at high schools than actually get to anybody that actually needed it. That would be around 3 trillion. So they're not even getting back to 2019 levels. And my proposal, which shockingly they didn't call me and ask my opinion on this, so I just posted it, it just, out of the kindness of my heart. My proposal was to go back to pre-Patriot Act spending. I feel like we go back to before the surveillance state and the massive militarization of local police forces and every intelligence agency hiring like hundreds of thousands of people. It seems like let's go back to that. That would be my proposal. So that was like 1.5 trillion. Like that would be to me, I will go on X live and congratulate Trump for not being a wuss if he gets back to 1.5.
I would agree. And of course, I remember when you posted that, and some people were adding things like, "Well, I wish you go back to pre-1787, spending levels." I'm like, okay, yes, of course, that would be even better. Let's go back to the Articles of Confederation and all that. But reality is, what you would propose seems like, call me, I'm no expert, but it seems like that shouldn't be that difficult to achieve. We've had the political, as they like to say, political will to implement that, to go back to Patriot Act era spending, or prior to Patriot Act spending. Really, it's kind of funny you mentioned that and you put it in those terms, because Patriot Act is a great example of where things really went wrong, right? Where like this is what made the 21st century so far even worse than the 20th, and that's a low bar. So I think that's it's a good litmus test, and I'm really kind of shocked and surprised that you weren't consulted, because I certainly think that's good advice.
I was probably unavailable.
You might have been.
Andy says libertarianism needs rebranding. So if Trump is plagiarizing and implementing, that's a good thing. It's an ideology. It doesn't need a rebranding. People just need, to wake up and understand it. Again, anybody can call themselves libertarian. And I think that's a positive, because that means they know what it is and they understand that freedom is better than tyranny and authoritarianism, but to me, it's kind of like when one of the Kardashians wore a Slayer shirt, and then Carrie King from Slayer a couple nights later wore an F the Kardashian shirt. It's kind of that vibe for me. Like
right. I look at this, and Andy brings up some really good points about marketing and reaching people, and language. Language is actually, we talked about this last week. Language is actually a really really important to understand how language is used, how language is manipulated, and so forth. And definitions are hugely important. So the definition of libertarianism is important. But to Andy's point, I find myself doing this a lot. I try to shorten libertarian to just liberty, and then I try to clearly define liberty as sort of a higher concept above just freedom. It's mutually respected freedom. And that to me is a fundamental principle. Again, I cling to these principles because I think that's how we unify the various liberty tribes, whether it's MAGA, whether it's libertarianism, whether it's anarchists or agorists like myself, or what have you. We are unified by certain fundamental, very American principles, individual liberty, right? It's so as long as you can define it clearly and succinctly in a way that most people understand, you're going to be okay. But I do tend to think the word libertarian has already been kind of, it is kind of a long word. And even though people are kind of understanding it more and more, it's not without a good advice to maybe think about, like, how do we define it even better? How do we get it to where people understand not just what libertarian means, but what what it means, what liberty itself means, in contrast to just the word freedom, which is often used synonymously. And really, there's a distinct, important difference. And it's a philosophical and principled difference, along with the principle of consent of the governed. These are the unifying principles: principles of individual liberty, principles of consent of the principle of consent of the governed. These are the things that are going to draw us together as we build coalitions at the local level and liberate our townships, ideally. And when we talk about liberating, that's the type of thing I want to emphasize, maybe a little bit more than just simply the word libertarian, because it does lend to some esoteric stuff. And I don't throw out agorism all the time, and trying to describe what that is, because I think there's a point there that's a little, it's just a little too esoteric, and I'd rather just stick to the principles, and we'll discuss those particulars at the right time and in the right context.
Chris says he's done 90-day freezes and called them cuts. I mean, I think I'm in wait and see mode. Positive developments, not really executed, but it's been a short period of time. I think, we're in the first inning of the baseball game here, and it doesn't really make sense to, leave our seats and go home. Let's find out how this turns out.
Yeah. Well, and also to Chris's point, though, I mean, this is something we have to sort of be honest about the type of, communicator that Donald Trump is. Like, he'll claim all sorts of victories, and that's really just a 90-day freeze or whatever. And so he is always going to put, his actions in the most favorable light possible. It's just what he does, consummate salesman. But I mean, for God's sake, we should have known that. We should know that by now about him. So that's the grain of salt that I was talking about. I put everything he says in that grain of salt context that, okay, he's probably exaggerating. He's probably, bolstering, what he does. And he's maybe even mischaracterizing at times, to make himself a little more heroic looking and so on. But again, if he's doing something, I mean, heck, I'll take a 90-day freeze. If he's doing some of the right things, then I'm not going to be complaining as much. Right. And thus far, again, what have we seen? We've seen some ridiculous stuff, but we've also seen Elon Musk, as you pointed out, and as Terry found, talking to Ron Paul about auditing the Federal Reserve. I mean, I never thought I'd see the day. So how could I not feel optimistic?
Yeah, and Phil says the 87 versus 89 or 89. 87 trillion versus 89 trillion. Does that seem like a libertarian win? I don't know where those figures are coming from.
No, he's just illustrating the $2 million cut, or $2 trillion cut. $2 trillion cut. That almost did a Dr. Evil there. Yeah, the $2 trillion cut. Is it a libertarian win? Well, I'll tell you what. It's better than 89 to 91. Right. I mean, but as far as wins, no, it's never going to be a libertarian win until we have, at the very least, a true minarchy or minarchy, at the very least. And of course, I would pull it even further. I started to use this description earlier, but it is kind of like pulling people out of a quicksand is always going to be a good thing. But the people at the very end of that rope that are pulling out the victims of the quicksand, those should be your anarchists, your ANCAPs, and your agorists at the most extreme end of that tug of that rope pulling people out. You want to have people who are the most extreme, so to speak, in their view of limiting government, like limiting it entirely, and governing not at all, as Henry David Thoreau would say. You want people on the end of that rope who have those convictions. And that's where pretty much where Free and I, we fit that description. We're pulling on that rope harder, and we're like the anchors pulling, people out of the dystopian quicksand. and that's where we kind of need to, that's our role. I'm comfortable being the guy that keeps pulling even after the constitutional monarchist says, oh, we're okay. We got this down to, pre-Patriot Act, spending, or we got this down to this level, and I'm comfortable with where the government is now. And I'm going to keep pulling, but that doesn't mean that I dismiss the 2 million savings, that could have been 2 million worse, or 2 billion trillion, whatever, worse. I'm going to, is it a victory? Not necessarily, but it's certainly an improvement. And so I'm going to keep pulling, and I'll keep pulling even after the minorists are probably done pulling, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I would even take that a step further. Like, I'm not expecting any victories. Like, we never get any victories. So
True.
I'm talking, I'm going to go at it day by day, look at the numbers piece by piece. Is it, is 2 trillion good? Sure. Is 3 trillion better? Sure. Like,
right.
But if it's 2 trillion that's not spent bombing the Middle East, that makes it even better than if it's 2 trillion that, was going to go towards unfunded liabilities that we have to pay somewhere down the line anyways. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to package this where it could be better than it appears and it could be worse than it appears, but it was going off a cliff, and it still might be going off a cliff.
It still is.
Even if Trump has the best presidency ever, it still might go off a cliff. So, like, I'm not expecting that at the end of this, like, we're going to be able to like turn hay into gold or crypto or whatever the modern version of that'll be. But I would appreciate my taxes going down. I'd appreciate all my costs not going up again next year. Like, all of those things would be huge victories to me personally. Right. But, I'm going to keep pushing back till, they get it to, pre-Patriot Act levels, and then I'll keep pushing more.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'll keep pulling people out, keep pulling us away from the dystopia, keep pulling people out of the quicksand of dystopia is kind of the approach I'm going to take. And until even after we're safely pulled out of it, I'll probably still pull until we have, a society based entirely on voluntary interaction. But again, we'll discuss that maybe next week.
Yeah. Luke, so I said when they were talking about 2 trillion, I called Elon Musk a wimp. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that's the absolute baseline right there is, at a minimum getting it to fiscal year 2019, but also no new hiring, no commitments to build condos in Gaza or whatever ridiculousness that is. Yes. Like, no, the other one that Casey didn't mention this on his list of things that concerns him, but the number one thing that concerns me is the mass deportation. One, I don't trust our government or our justice system to do anything. So I don't really trust them with mass deportation, even though there's some bad people that got in that probably shouldn't be here. But in addition to that, the cost of that. So in a Senate committee meeting, somebody testified in front of them and said that the cost to deport one person was over 20 grand. So if you go off of Trump's numbers of 23 million illegals need to be deported, I mean, that's a significant amount of money. And, so like one action like that, similar to in Trump's first term, when he said, well, Obama let the military go to crap, we need to spend all this money on the military. One decision like that can ruin all of these $2 million cuts, $1 billion cuts. Like, all of those would go away instantly with like one bad decision. Right. And those bad decisions usually involve the military. So they hurt me twice because I don't want to go bomb people. I don't want to, do anything by coercion or by force or, put people in jail. Like, I don't want any of those things.
Right. No, I agree. I tend to think that there's this tendency to like do really good here and then wait a minute, what are you talking about? Build up the military. The military was a bloated monster where the military, the people actually needed the a lot of that spending, people actually, on the front lines or doing whatever the military is supposed to do, weren't even the actual recipients. I mean, they're going to these inflated military industrial complex contracts. And I honestly just think, I'd like to think Trump just didn't even know that's what he was essentially, when he was increasing the military budget, he was increasing the military industrial complex budget. He was contributing to their bottom line rather than just simply spending a lot more wisely what was already in place for the military. And more importantly, not spreading the military across 170 odd nations across the world, or some ridiculously large figure of military countries where we have a military presence. Like, that's the part that needs to change. It's not okay, I'm going to bolster up the military for the sake of I'm going to call the military home. And that, I mean, if that's not America first, I don't know what is. The job of the American military. So that should have been the approach in his first term. And you're right, it wasn't. I'm not sure what to expect this time, though, because things do seem pretty different. It seems his mentality is pretty different. It's not, we're not going to do, as Andre Marou would have said in 1992, Libertarian candidate for president. We're not going to do right-wing socialism either. We're going to be smart. I think, honestly, that's another really positive thing about Elon Musk's his contribution. I do think it's probably a good taste to see how he treats the military budget. If he wants the Pentagon to be audited.
So
Casey just said he supports the mass deportation and the cost.
Yeah, well, you're welcome to pay for it. I don't want to pay for it.
Well, okay, let's address that really quick, because first of all, I do think it's we should be selective about it at the very least, right? I mean, just okay. Well, everybody is here illegally needs to go. Well, no, if they're here illegally, but they haven't done anything wrong since, and they're basically holding down a job and not draining anything, let's let. I mean, this is the libertarian in me. It's like, well, let's give them a chance to become. First of all, we have to admit that the government's immigration system was overly bureaucratic, punished people who were trying. Essentially, it made it much more difficult to come here legally than it should be for peaceful people, and it made it much more appealing and easy for people who weren't maybe of the best intention to come here illegally. So it was inverted from what it should be. So let's at least acknowledge that. And I know this firsthand from people who love America, couldn't wait to get away from Brazil and be Americans, and they had the worst, totally peaceful people, no problem no problems with them whatsoever. Peaceful people loved America, couldn't wait to become naturalized citizens, and they had a heck of a time. It was expensive, it was demanding, and I think that needs to be streamlined. So I can see why some people do come here illegally to try to sort it out after they get here. But for the folks that have done wrong after getting here, that should be the priority. If we're going to be spending money on deporting people, it should be those are the ones that have already triggered a red flag that should be rounded up and sent to wherever they came from. So I am very selective about that. I don't think this deportation of every single illegal makes a whole lot of sense when there's clearly a difference between the types of people that we should be focusing on.
Zach says the mass deportations are setting a very bad precedent to effectively end due process forever. Like, that's 100% Zach. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Is They always do these things and they say, it's for the children, or it's to make everybody healthier. But then that's never really what it's about. So, like, I get people don't want bad people here. I don't want bad people here either.
And that makes sense, But there's a caveat to that, and I don't want to get hung up on this because this isn't really the main focus of tonight. But it's something to think about, right? Right. No, it isn't. I mean, we're more or less we're talking about Elon Musk's libertarian bona fides, and whether or not they are real or not, or how should we take that? But it is kind of an important distinction, I think, that we're making with regards to the immigration thing.
Let me run through these. I want to just knock these out. I go faster than you. No offense.
Yeah.
Gene said 20 million to transport one illegal. I think I said 23 million illegals it was Trump's number, and I think I said 20,000 to
It's 20,000 per individual.
So if I mess those up, I apologize, but those are the correct numbers. And then yeah, I mean, there's lots of costs, Casey. I mean, I get the expense of it, but the government makes these blanket statements and then does something else. And like, you know, this is just another, like, you know, another way of filtering money to somebody. And, you know, like, people are going to be lining up with their hands out. They're saying they're going to, instead of like laying off the people at the 3-letter agencies, they're going to deputize them to go to the border or whatever. Like, well, I thought we solved the border when, you know, we took the tariffs off or whatever. I mean, like, it's just a whole bunch of bullshit. And I've never trusted them. I will never trust them. They give me all of my money back for all of the corruption for, you know, USAID and all this other stuff. I still won't trust them. But until they give me all my money back for all that corruption, I have every right to say they're full of shit. They've always been full of shit. They're like a girlfriend that's cheated on you every weekend. Like, if you trust them
On the eve of Valentine's Day, you go there. Okay.
Yeah. You're not paying attention if you trust them one iota.
Yeah, a little bit of healthy skepticism and maybe some balance and some reason. You know, nothing wrong with that. Like, it's okay to want, obviously, the dangerous people to get the heck out of the country. No, that's perfectly justifiable. So, you know, let's be smart about it. That's really all I would ever say. But again, let's get to your. I don't want to get on derailed. Let's. You got some really great stuff you're going to throw at us. So let's get back to that if you're ready, Friedman.
Yeah, I can't decide if I want to yell at people in the comments for a few more minutes.
No. Let's not yell.
All right. Damn it, Casey, I'm calling you afterwards then. I'm kidding. I'm not going to yell at Casey. All right. So we did this, and then
That's beautiful.
So then, to kind of segue a little bit, and we're not going to get to the majority of what I had, or a tenth of what I had, but to segue a little bit, we also have Musk talking about Milton Friedman, and he's paraphrasing Friedman, but he says the worst results come from people spending other people's money on a different group of other people. That is the government. And that's, yeah, I mean, that's, you know, Milton Friedman obviously is like the North Star for economists, in my opinion. So, I mean, doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, I mean, Milton Friedman was still a monetarist versus an Austrian, which I prefer. But I don't know if I've ever discussed this with you before, Free, but I got to meet Milton Friedman. He actually went to the inauguration ceremony of the president of my university, Chapman University, when he was inaugurated as president. The president then, it was Jim Doty, who was also my advisor before he became president of the school. And Milton Friedman, he was a student of Milton Friedman. He was a student of the Chicago school. They were monetarists. Monetarists they're close, but they still believe in a central bank of sorts. But they believe it should be closely monitored and not, you know, they were still very hostile to Keynesian thinking and Keynesian economics. But on the whole, Milton Friedman's observations about capitalism, and honestly, he was probably the most articulate, right up there with Thomas Sowell, the most articulate proponent of capitalism that I've ever read. Because Mises was good, don't get me wrong, and more pure as he was an Austrian, but he was also, I think his, some of his, he couldn't produce some of the layman's term explanations that Milton Friedman was able to produce and was so effective at. Free to Choose. This is still a fantastic series about the benefits of free market economics. So I agree. Friedman is a North Star in terms of articulating the benefits of capitalism, but I wouldn't necessarily say he's as good as the Austrian school, but Chicago school ultimately still not that bad.
Yeah, I'm talking about. You're 100% right. I was talking more about government intervention in the economy and things like that. Like, you know, I mean, Friedman's batting average is probably in the 800s, and
easily, no question.
I will take that from anybody that's anywhere near the government, because, you know, Keynesian's terrible and the government's terrible and everybody that's in the government's terrible. So,
right. And
Yeah.
anybody involved with centralized banking is generally terrible too. So yeah, but unless they're doing it Friedman's way, which by the way, spoiler alert, nobody ever did at the Federal Reserve. They never followed monetarism ever. It's always been some variation of Keynesianism. But doesn't mean Friedman didn't have a good, valid point in that regard. And bottom line, as you said, he's still probably in terms of the popular imagination, he's still probably the most articulate in terms of just creating sound bites and anecdotes to really illustrate how powerfully capitalism works to the betterment of humanity than any other form of economy.
And there's a ton of video of him too, so that makes it that much more interesting. But let me see if I can do that. Speaking of video,
oh yeah, you got video.
Did that share? You see that? Maybe not. Here we go.
I can't see it.
But
there
we go. Can I go bigger? That work? I'm switching between screens. There we go. Okay. Tell me if you can't hear it after I hit the play button. But this is a video Musk shared of Milton Friedman. So pretty cool.
Keep your eye on one thing and one thing only, how much government is spending. Because that's the true tax. Every budget is balanced. There is no such thing as an unbalanced federal budget. You're paying for it. If you're not paying for it in the form of explicit taxes, you're paying for it indirectly in the form of inflation or in the form of borrowing. Keep your eye on one thing and one thing only, how much government is.
So important. And again, very focused representation of what Elon Musk says he's at least trying to do with Department of Government efficiency. It's control spending. Now, it's really another thing I kind of kept thinking about is the one part of Donald Trump's first term that I found most annoying. Well, one of the things I found very annoying was he would talk about reducing taxes. He reduced our taxes, right? I mean, I saw a reduction in my income tax, federal income tax, but none of the spending was not reduced. In fact, it skyrocketed under the COVID era legislation. So again, this was really good that this video was shared by Elon Musk, who probably is has the majority of Donald Trump's ear right now. Fantastically optimistic about that, even though sure it's not perfect, but it's pretty damn close to, and certainly far better than anything we've ever seen coming out of a very significant advisor to the President of the United States.
Yeah, and it's funny because I explain to friends sometimes. They say, "Well, you're a libertarian. How would you solve the government's problems?" And I say, "Well, you're kind of asking a loaded question. It's kind of like asking a doctor. The patient has brain cancer, lung cancer, pancreatic cancer, needs open heart surgery, and is bleeding from the jugular vein. What do you do?" I don't know what will solve this, but a guy reposting Friedman, who we mostly agree with, way better than, somebody saying, let's kick the can down the road because I need to get reelected.
Right.
Way better to me. And some people agree with us in the chat, others not. Zach saying Mises called Milton Hayek and company socialist and walked out like a boss.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and he's not necessarily wrong, but I think Mises was also pretty. He had a real disagreeable personality, from what I understand. Whereas Hayek and Milton Friedman, I know from firsthand, having met Milton Friedman, very likable person, very good demeanor. I don't think people could say that about Ludwig von Mises.
Yeah, and I mean, every video I've seen of him, pretty good. There's the famous one where he's basically doing the fantasy draft of which departments would you get rid of, and he got rid of all of them except for 4. I would take that. I'm good with that. Anybody in the government wants to repost that's their idea and share that video, I will repost that. I will quote tweet it. I will give it a thumbs up and some fancy emojis. I'm good with that.
Yes.
Zach says David better than Milton.
Yeah, true. David Freeman's actually better. David's an ANCAP.
Yeah, this David is the son for those of you
Yes.
keeping score at home. Elon is going on a Milton streak, but let's not forget Milton is okay with 5% annual monetary inflation.
That's the monetarism, yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely bad ideas out there for sure. Eric says, I'm all for Elon's Austrian economic phase. He's constantly reposting Milton Friedman and more recently Ron Paul. Regardless if he's libertarian or not, he's a public facing persona,
100%.
certainly is promoting that direction. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the point of what we're talking about here. Is it all perfect? No. But is it better than, Lindsey Graham out there saying, we shouldn't just nuke them once, we should nuke them twice? Like, I mean, to me, it's night and day.
Nuke them till they glow. Right.
Yeah. Like, if somebody's going to be leading it, way better that it's Trump and Musk than Lindsey Graham and Mitch McConnell and the warmongers and, or any of the fools on the Democrat side.
Right.
Gene likes Milton. We said something Gene liked. I'm putting that in the win
good.
column.
That's good. Well, Milton Friedman's it's hard to disagree with his approach and his again. He really is articulate, right?
I wanted to clone Ron Paul, so I had that idea first.
Yes, it would not be a bad idea at all.
The Luke applied to Chapman's law school.
Excellent. Good choice. Good choice.
Don't tell him you know Mike. That would be my recommendation.
Yeah, don't. Get that. I was a little too extreme even for that school.
And Terry endorsed me being the moral high ground if you leave out the last word.
Wow.
All right, I'm going to edit that. I'm just going to put some emojis after it, like hearts and stuff. Let's see here. Yeah, so Luke says, who? There. That's the right answer.
Right.
All right. So where are we here? And then, so in Elon's words, I'm a libertarian at heart, but pragmatism often, I must have deleted a sentence there. But that was an indication of his philosophical alignment with libertarianism, though not explicitly mentioning the Libertarian Party. And then he said, I voted for many Republicans and many Democrats over the years, as I'm a big believer in individual liberty. Another kind of libertarian leaning person, statement. So, what are the big takeaways at this point here, Mike? What are you thinking about? Is he a libertarian? Kind of the question that we posed and what's been going around in the chat.
I tend to think he's certainly libertarian sympathetic. I think libertarian leaning is also a fair descriptor for Elon Musk. I think he understands what it means, and I think he is. When I mean he understands it, I mean that he's actually embraced it to some extent. I think that's a very genuine thing. As to whether or not he thinks it can actually work to the full extent that I think you and I know it can and should is another story. I think he's more or less like understands that the guys again on the end of the rope, they're pulling people out of the dystopian quicksand, need to be libertarian, right? And I think he would agree with that. I think we're even seeing that. As to whether it becomes effective or not, I don't really know. But also, I reserve the right to always have a little grain of salt doubt that maybe this is all theatrics and maybe this is all for show. Maybe it's just theatrical in nature, and maybe there isn't as much sincerity as we would hope behind these words and even these actions. But that begs the question again: isn't that still pretty darn good compared to what we've had before? I mean, compared to going back to. I can count on one hand the number of presidential administrations, well, maybe 1.5 hands, that actually adhered to some semblance of liberty as a principle, individual liberty as a principle. So even if it is just for show, it's a pretty good show, and it's got people thinking about it. As my friend Eric mentioned earlier, there's no really walking back from this.
Yeah, the far left.
Yeah.
I think it's for show.
Yeah, the far left sure doesn't. I don't know if you can hear that, but he said the far left sure doesn't think it's a show. The entrenched left wing interests that are essentially responsible for the dystopia that we're in certainly don't think it's for show. So that's that's still a net positive. I'll take that over. It's a net gain for individual liberty. I'll take it. So yeah, I mean, I think there's enough sincerity to his libertarian comments and actions that it's safe to say that he's certainly libertarian leaning, if not libertarian sympathetic.
Yeah, really great points. I would say similar. One, it doesn't matter what he calls himself or what he doesn't call himself. It'll be all about the actions.
Yes.
And, and he's an imperfect human being as well, right? He has government contracts. He got rich because of the government.
That's right.
So, he's going to have things that are his pet projects that he's not going to want to see go away. So, I mean, is he going to be a great libertarian purist? Probably not.
Yeah.
Is he going to be, the Jacob Hornberg of the Trump administration? I mean, probably not, but is he going to be better than, Mike Pence or, somebody like that advising Trump?
Jeff Sessions.
I mean, yeah, Jeff Sessions, by leaps and bounds, right?
Yeah.
And
Bolton.
he could probably just do that by not doing anything. So
just don't be those guys, and you're probably going to be okay.
Don't be those guys brings you from a 0 to an 8 for people that Trump's had in his administration, right?
True.
Luke says the first case of this could be money supporting a libertarian candidate in the Republican primary to replace Mitch McConnell.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I would never advise a libertarian to run for Senate. I mean, what was the Ohio race? I mean, I think they spent tens of billions on just ads. It was I think the whole race total went over 100 billion or something. It was a crazy number. I mean,
it would have to be. I mean, again, this is now we're going to kind of go back to, and this is kind of a good time to maybe go back into the strategy that I think makes the most sense, which is focus on local races and focus on winning those races, taking over local governing bodies, school board, city council, whatever, taking over local governing bodies to nullify the unjust and unconstitutional governance of larger governing bodies. That I think still seems to be kind of our shift in focus for the Libertarian Party, or at least or liberty-minded people. But I think when it comes to Senate and stuff, and races of any significant size, state Senate to a certain extent, and certainly national Senate races, it's going to only be about messaging, and it depends on how effective you can counter the message of who you're up against. But the interesting thing and compelling thing about and I'm learning this by getting really close to a lot of the major grassroots MAGA people here in California who are trying to stage simultaneously a coup against the established California GOP, and I can say that publicly. These guys are pretty obvious about it. They're trying to oust the old school, perfectly comfortable being mutual controlled opposition with Democrats version of the GOP, and so naturally identify with them. I want to help them. That's a great goal. I'm on board with that. But the other thing that I noticed in the larger races is it may make more sense to, if you truly have a liberty-leaning MAGA grassroots fighter who is not going to play mutual controlled opposition when they get into office, somebody along the lines of a Thomas Massey or somebody even in close to that orbit wants to go up against a Mitch McConnell, I'd throw weight behind those guys. Because if anything, Ron Paul, who we all cite as a key figure in libertarianism, he was able to govern at the national level, and participate in the national level politics and make a heck of a statement, even though yeah, a lot of it fell on deaf ears and still does to this day. He made a huge impact, and he did so with an R next to his name. I'm sorry to say that may be a more justifiable use of time, energy, and effort is to find the next Thomas Massey and Ron Paul and run them against Mitch McConnell. And that's just me just thinking off the top of my head. But otherwise, I'm not opposed to Libertarian Party people running in these higher office races, as long as you recognize it's going to be about getting the message out and shining light in the darkness of your opponents, of establishment Republicans or dystopian Democrats and whatnot. That's still a valuable purpose. It can still help, but ideally that helps the down ticket. It helps your allies and the grassroots at the lower races to get them into office. That's to me is the ultimate purpose of running a libertarian in a higher race. It's just really help the down ticket.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's all strategy, right? Like, if McConnell runs again, which I don't think he will, but if McConnell runs again, then the goal needs to be getting rid of McConnell, and then you look at who's available, who has support, who has money, who can beat McConnell. So if you're choosing between a libertarian or Justin Amash and Mike Rogers, like they were in Michigan, you go for Amash, right? Like, I mean, so it's all strategy. Like having,
right.
Kind of one of the themes of this conversation has been having unrealistic expectations and crapping on decent ideas because they're not great ideas is just counterproductive. Now, like proposing and espousing good ideology is a great idea, but to say they cut if they cut taxes by 99%, I would take that. Like it's not as good as 100%. I understand
right?
That. You can feel free to put that in my comments or not put that in my comments if that happens, because I'll get that all day long. But like, I would be a fan of 99%, not as much of a fan as I would be of 100%. So Gene says it's a start, isn't it? And it's like 100%. But like, to go back to the sports analogy, our government is not a first place team right now. Like, we are out of the playoffs, in my opinion. And so Trump is talking about how to get us back to first place. And so as people that do commentary on this and write content and do all of this stuff, it's our role to comment on this. And until the money ends up back in our pockets, I don't think anything has been solved. So the indicators are good, no doubt about it.
Right.
But until it happens, it's not even a start. It's just an idea.
And we keep pulling. That's kind of our job is we keep pulling on the rope that's trying to pull the whole nation, the whole of humanity out of this dystopian quicksand. And we may pull harder than most because our expectations are higher because we know they need to be. Like if we just settle for a hypothetical 10% reduction in taxes, doesn't mean we don't appreciate it when it happens, but we're going to pull harder for more until liberty is restored, until liberty is reconstituted across the country. And again, I don't expect that much ultimately from the national level. It really has to be us at the grassroots doing our part to nullify unjust governance and find other ways around getting around the income tax, getting around these other infringements of our liberty that the national government, and in many cases our state governments, are terribly guilty of.
There's some sort of interference. I don't know if somebody turned something on or whatever, but there's a noise that's making it a little harder to hear you. But Eric said that Amash ran as a libertarian. No, he ran as a Republican. He ran in the primary in Michigan against Mike Rogers. Trump endorsed Mike Rogers, which pretty much ended Amash right there. And I think he ended up with like single digits or in the low teens in the primary. So it was not even close. So, no, I mean, I would vote for Amash if he ran as a Democrat. Like, you know, I could care less if, you know, I look at them based on what they are and what they, you know, he has a track record. I mean, he has the greatest track record in Congress. So, like, you know, I would vote for him no matter what party he ran for.
Yeah, I'm a little more critical of Amash than you, but I still would. I mean, over those options, hands down, right? Who he was running against, hands down, Amash should have gotten that. Should have run away with it. So
who's better than Amash?
Oh, as far as what? As far as in Congress?
Yeah,
I think Massey's better, and you know, I think you know, there, you know, Amash certainly stood out, but as far as like the only weaknesses I find with Amash was he you know, he didn't really have to jump as hard as he did on the let's impeach Donald Trump bandwagon a little bit.
well,
I mean,
take that out of it. That
Right.
like actual policy stuff. Like he was misled by the Steele dossier.
I think he was, yeah, and but that even then that's a little bit forgivable. But he also was not that great when it came to. I mean, he wasn't as good as Massey when it came to COVID stuff. You know, for example, that's really the dividing line between the two of them, and why I put Massey in a slightly higher category than Justin Amash. Don't get me wrong. I would, if Justin Amash was running for Congress here in California, he would obviously get my vote over anybody else that's been proposed in and around where I live. So he's still better than by far the vast majority of people who ever served in Congress, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
But
I mean, I should have said other than Massey, who's better than that, because like,
yeah,
you know, I think there's a severe drop off after Massey and Amash. And I don't even think Rand Paul's in the same conversation as those two, you know.
Well, I may be a little more forgiving of Rand Paul, but than you are. But yeah, I'd say that you know, he's still super high caliber compared to most anybody that's ever served in Congress.
Rand Paul's a solid, you know, B-. You know, Massey's an A-. Amash B+. You know, everybody else, you know, Mike Lee's moving into the B's.
Yeah, he is.
Like, you know, there's some decent people like Burchett and stuff like that, and then there's a severe drop off, and like, you know, everybody else is an F.
I think that's a fair assessment.
So, like, you know, yeah, I don't even remember why we started talking about this, but Eric said, I meant to say Amash ran as Libertarian on the Republican ticket after switching parties. Yeah, I mean, he's definitely, and that's kind of back to our original point. Like, you can have Libertarian ideology, you know, without being part of the LP. So, you know, there's some places, you know, Michigan has straight ballot voting. Going to be really hard for a Libertarian to ever get elected there because of straight ballot voting. We need to get rid of straight ballot voting. We need to get rid of parties on the ticket. You know, parties being listed on the ticket. You know, I'm for ranked choice voting, although I do understand some people's concerns with it. I'd be willing to try anything at this point because, you know, people, like, we've enabled people to vote for people they don't know, which was not the original intention. Like, people do a better job voting for the all-star game for the MLB than they do voting for the federal government, which is insanity.
It is.
Casey says, I agree. I would take both, but unfortunately, Libertarians are rare. So I think we should push more locally as Libertarians to fight against the Fed instead of one seat in the Senate where they won't get anything done because they're dominated by the system. Yeah, I mean, like, they just tell Massey to go. They just tell Massey to go sit in the corner, basically.
Yeah, exactly. He's just the voice crying in the wilderness in Congress. So yeah, you're absolutely right, Casey. We have much more chance. And don't get me wrong, I think it's important to have somebody who is the voice of the wilderness saying, you're all wrong, you're all insane, and I'm going to be the only one voting no on this. I think it's actually kind of cool, but you're right, it isn't necessarily effective. Where we are effective is at the local level where we can actually make a difference. And so help me, I'm going to duplicate what's happened in Huntington Beach in as many cities across the world as possible, where you take over the local governing body and nullify and say no, practice civil disobedience to the larger governing bodies. It just makes it, it's where it's not easy, and God knows it's still a fight, but at least you can make substantive change. You're at least able to see something shift. Massey, God bless him, is often relegated to the sidelines, even though everybody with any common sense agrees with it.
Getting a libertarian governor is far more beneficial than a U.S. senator. I don't disagree with that one. I think we need libertarians at the local level. And I think the federal government, unless Trump is successful doing what you all think he's trying to do, then, I think the federal level is a lost cause. And the only option would be fighting back from the local level or succession. And
this is the natural progression of this line of questioning about whether Elon Musk is a libertarian or not, where it essentially goes. Let's talk about this whole thing at the national level. I do think that there's no going back. I do think certain doors have opened that will never be shut again. But I also think that there is a distinct chance that 4 years from now, a lot of these gains can be reversed. That's what we saw when Joe Biden was installed, right? In 2020, we saw the reversal of the few really good things that Trump had did for the economy and so forth. All of it just was rolled back. So there is still that possibility, I think, in 4 years from now. So we have to take the whatever gains, especially when it's done by executive order at the national level, as potentially very temporary for the most part. There are certain things I agree with Eric. Obviously, there are certain things that we're never going to see reversed because the cat's out of the bag and people are too aware and they won't tolerate it. But can we say that about all of these gains? No. I think we have to make them real at the local level.
I think we got all of the questions here. If you want to throw any final questions, we'll probably wrap it up here in a minute or so. Local elections are the most important, 100%.
100%, Andy.
Yes, local, far more important. Take back control and then force the Fed out state by state, or just refuse to pay them.
Right. Oh, yeah, exactly. There's that too. We talked about tax rebellion is actually something that is very real. It's necessary, perhaps.
The entire system that's been in power since 1912 is freaking out right now. They're worried that we might be able to get rid of them. Like I said, I'm not used to being optimistic, but I am cautiously optimistic in this case.
Yeah, I'm not used to it either, but boy, it's looking that way, right? And why not? It's about time. It's certainly an answer to prayer, right? Why not? Let's get this done.
Cool. Well, let's go to see here. Yeah, so this was a fun one, and let me add this back to the stage.
Yes.
So thanks for joining us, everybody. It was kind of cool to talk about some real world libertarianism, possibly, and it's kind of a neat thing to kick around and have as a possibility. Saturday, we're not doing it tomorrow, but Saturday we're doing Are You Smarter Than a Politician? Go back in our archives. You can check out, we did the rules for new radicals. We did a show on Ross. I'm doing Race, Faith, and Freedom with Cash on Wednesdays.
Very good.
And we're going to be doing a Doge show with Casey, so stay tuned for that. Buy Mike's book, follow Mike.
Yes, thank you, guys. Yes.
There's Terry. And please repost the live stream too to see if you can get us any more traction with the algorithm. So appreciate any help anybody can give us.
Thank you very
And,
much, everyone.
Yeah. Thanks, Mike. And thanks, Terry. And have a good night, everybody.
Have a good night, everyone. Take care.